Well, thanks for the Salary Commission song.
You're very welcome. Next time I'll wait till everyone's in and do a little ditty.
do a little theme song to get us going.
Maybe the last meeting you can sing us out.
Yeah, there we go. Okay, stream's active, so I'll be here if you need me.
All right, thank you, Jack.
You're welcome.
And Susan and Suzanne were both going to be here, right?
Yeah, I've not heard anything from them.
Yeah, I didn't hear anything to the contrary either. So
cool.
There they are.
Awesome. Well, we'll go ahead and get started. So welcome everyone. Good afternoon. We have a lot to talk about today, so we'll just start with the agenda and then we'll dive into the first item. We have the comparator template and discussion first. So I'm sure there's a lot for us to kind of discuss around that. Then revisiting the part-time versus full-time commissioner topic and continuing there. Other items or questions to keep us moving towards our decision. And then item number 4 is the announcement that next meeting will be on Wednesday, April 21st at 3 p.m. instead of the 23rd at 3 p.m. So we'll repeat that again at the end of the meeting. And that's what we have. So why don't we just get started with this first item, the comparator templates and discussion. It seemed like from our last meeting, the big topic was really looking at the internal comparators again, if we had some new information there. So I wonder, is everyone okay with starting with that? And any additional background information that Heike or Susan were able to get in the last couple of weeks?
Susan, did you want to go ahead and share?
I've got background noise. I'm sorry, my neighbor's doing some construction. So if you hear it, I apologize for it. We were able to have a couple of discussions around the different levels and around kind of what the work is for the deputy and for the assistant deputy. And I think that with that conversation, and Heike, I think for you to weigh in on it, if we were looking more at the assistant level as being more of a comparator, after we've had those conversations around just the interaction that they have with the commissioners and the work assignments that they do, and that a lot of the work is more transactional than strategic on projects that get done at the county level.
Yeah, I think specifically she said that at the assistant commissioner level, it's really a COO role. It's dealing with operations versus the strategic role of the commissioner. And then she talked a lot about the deputies where they take care of the day-to-day responsibilities.
And you got my email about the study that's going on around those offices within the CAO's office, and they may be changing. So it might be a good, if it's a good comparator now, it might not be in the future, or vice versa.
And she mentioned that as well.
Perfect. Thanks.
Then we also met, I think separately, we also met with Eva in HR and really talked about the factors that she considered. If there's any weightings, they do not, at least in my conversation, they do not weight the factors. They evaluate education and experience, and there's a minimum requirement. If there's more than that, then they're assigned points for the additional levels of experience or education. But that really doesn't apply in this situation because we're not really looking at the individuals. We're more looking at the positions, and for placing a new position in a salary range or grade, they really take a look at external comparators and then place the positions that way.
And a lot of the external comparators are ones that we have talked about with this group as well.
Mm-hmm. In fact, I think many of them are the same.
Well, that's all super helpful. Something that just sticks out to me is that, so if we're using the deputy county administrator as an internal comparator, like if we decide that that is the closest comparator, that's what we want to use, it does feel like we wouldn't necessarily, like we'd want it to be a comparator for how it's currently positioned and compensated, but we wouldn't necessarily want to link it in the same way that it's currently linked to, what's the position that the chair is currently linked to? It's at 80% of
A circuit court judge.
Oh yeah. It seems like we probably wouldn't want the philosophy to be that it's like forever linked to that position.
I'd agree, particularly since the salary commission every 2 years. And so what decisions you make for this upcoming period will be reviewed again starting in 2023 when the new salary commission is named. And so they can, maybe some of you will come back and join it again, but each salary commission will probably take a look at what was done in the past and then decide whether that's still valid for the future. And, they may go entirely different direction. So if it's an imperfect alignment this time, or it turns out to be that things have changed and there's not the same alignments, then the new salary commission at the next salary commission can use an entirely different thing. So this was, in essence, you're doing it for the year. It's a year and a half basically that it starts. Well, 2 years period, because it'll run through the first half of the calendar year of 2023. So.
One additional thing that Ava actually shared as well, because I asked, there's the minimum, then there's the median, and then there's the high on the salary, the quadrants. And I asked where everyone fell, and she said that most people, they come in with 20 plus years of experience, and because of the additional points that they gain, all of them are at the highest level, highest quadrant.
And I think that part of that is just some of the tradition in public sector is you find a trend of most of the employees are at the top of the ranges, the maximum of the range. I know for us at the county that we have a very high percentage. So it doesn't, and as you go up executive level, you find more, almost the entire number of positions maxed out.
And that range is currently like 126 to 161 about. So everyone is in that role is currently at the top at 161. Okay. Other thoughts on the internal comparator, and it seems like we probably just need to revisit the external comparator now that everyone's had a little bit of time to sit with our conversation last time, and then we can just maybe talk about like both of them together, some possible philosophies for moving forward. Does that work? Okay, so for the external comparator, we left off, we had all of the counties still being used for the commissioner comparator. We took off a few of them when it came to the chair because they either didn't have a chair or there was no difference in the pay. And I did have one question I wanted to ask about this. The column O, that column just doesn't include the, like any column M. Is that accurate? And then column P includes column M, like added up throughout the year? Or I'm just curious if you could clarify the difference between those two to make sure I'm interpreting.
Yeah, column O is the ERI adjusted annual amount. So that's the Economic Research Institute. It brings wages from outside of, in this case, the Hillsborough area, where the county seat of Washington County is, to the cost of labor in that area. And so that is just the base salary, but you will see it fluctuate for places like Snohomish and places that are outside of the local market. And then P is the total compensation column. So that includes the ERI adjusted annual amount, the deferred compensation, any additional pay that we found out about, and the PERS pickup, if there is one. So yeah, it includes L through O for column P.
Okay, thank you.
Just to jump into this again. So we did make the updates based on our last meeting. So as Casey mentioned, we removed some jurisdictions, made those edits. I think the chair might be, or it could be potentially a spot that we start the conversation. Just if we're looking at pure market with the comparators that we left in, being Multnomah, Clackamas, Snohomish, and Pierce. The market average just for base salary is about 134,000. And then getting into the total compensation, which we originally wanted to look at this because there is no PERS pickup at Washington County, and we knew that some other counties had that. Being that we included a lot of Washington counties that have a much different retirement system, it almost evened itself out. It's still a 1% difference, but the total compensation didn't show that big of a percentage variance. So just the base pay was 7.69% off of market. And then if we looked at the total compensation, it was 8.96 away from the market. So I think it was good to look at both, but I don't know that it necessarily showed a huge difference there. And then again, if we were to only go with the straight market numbers that are on here, on the commissioner side of things, including all of those jurisdictions, which is a larger list than the chair for reasons that we already discussed, the market average for base pay only was 114,590. And the percentage variance from the market was obviously huge, 57%. And then it actually went down to 54.7% when we looked at the total compensation column. With that, I don't know if we want to talk more about the comparators and if we're still comfortable with this list, and if so, how we use it to get to a number. The only other thing to call out that I didn't update based on the last meeting was Spokane County. If you guys remember, was 37.5 hours at full time, and we did talk about bringing that salary up to a full 40-hour week. I looked into their personnel rules though, and they actually identify 37.5 or 40 hours as a full work week. So I felt like since they see them the same at their county, there wasn't really a need to recalculate that number and make it into a 40-hour a week number. So open to different opinions, but I just wanted to call out the reason why that number stayed the same based on our last meeting.
I think that sounds great, leaving it as is. That makes sense. Does anyone have any other like suggestions on like, should any of these counties not be a comparator? Is everyone still feeling like we've got the right list here on the external front?
I know one thing that came up, I think it's for Pierce County. One of the counties, let me just double check. One has 2019 rates for part of their commissioners, and they have 2020 rates for the other part. That's for Pierce County. And we may just want to clarify as a group, should we just move forward using their 2020 numbers? Because if they do elect someone else into one of those roles, they would get the higher salary for 2020. So that was just one thing I wanted to call out that was a little unique for Pierce County.
I think that we probably should. Does everyone agree, or does anyone want to go a different route? It seems like when I was just trying to like dig into this and do some brainstorming of some possible approaches, it seems like the external comparators are nice to be able to kind of calibrate and make sure that it makes sense, whatever we come up with on the internal side of things, just to see like, how does it fit within these comparator counties? Are we way off? Like, are they paid way below counties that have as much smaller population and budget? Are we like way too high compared to those that have a lot higher responsibilities? But just kind of using it that way, as opposed to using it to be the like driving calculation.
Well, the choice is yours. I mean, you can choose, like I've always said, you can choose one, the other, or both combined. So that you're in the driver's seat for that decision.
And a lot of that, like when you look at the different counties, like size alone, services alone, like there's not a clear methodology, obviously, because they're different organizations. And so there's not really a clear way to say like, oh, well, this is where they might fit. There's probably a range where just looking logically, you can tell like it should probably be between this $10,000 to $15,000 range for each position.
I think there's at least a good mix of as many populations that are higher than Washington County. There are also ones that are lower. And then there's maybe one or two that are pretty in line. But yeah, as you said, we're never going to find a nice number of jurisdictions that match services and population and all of that. So I do think there's at least a good range represented for at least the commissioner tab that has quite a few comparators. Does anyone else have thoughts on, at a certain point we have to like figure out a number, right? And I'm just curious, like what other thoughts and ideas people have, if we're not going to base it purely on market.
I was thinking maybe we could try to index the population and maybe the budget information, or just something to kind of ground us on what would be more apples to apples as we look at the different counties, at least for the commissioner roles. I think this information is really helpful for us to see how other counties are structured and how many different council members or commissioners they have in direct report. So I think, you know, if we could figure out some sort of way to index the information so we can see some commonality between all of them would be my suggestion.
I think that's a really good idea. I did something, it was just looking at things in a really simple way, and it was, oh, sorry, Suzanne, go ahead.
Casey, if you wanted to say your thought first, I'm fine with that.
No, it's okay, you can go.
Okay. You know, I know I'm the alternate, and I did miss the meeting last time, but I did watch the video of the conversation, and I don't want to get too far in the weeds, and I also don't want to discount any work that people have done because it's all really great work. I would go for a more simplified process. This is never going to be an apples to apples comparison. This is not like matching an engineering technician with an engineering technician at another county, except that these public officials are elected. They perform the same duties across counties. And what we're trying to do is determine what should these folks be paid, because regardless of the size of the budget or the population, they're all providing services to these citizens. Some parts are unincorporated. Some counties have a larger municipal influence. And so you can dissect this information down to a very granular level, and you may not come up with a more comprehensive result. So it would be my recommendation to simplify this process. These are elected officials. All of these counties have elected officials, and their duties are similar. And so I would focus on those comparators that you've done the work on for the external. That's just my opinion. Thank you.
I'm muted. Thanks, Suzanne. I have like some notes I wrote of just an idea. I can share my screen, but I just wanted of just kind of where I was thinking through processing it. I'm totally fine if we use like any other approach, if we use pieces of this, none of this, but it is possibly a simplified approach. I don't know. It made sense to me, but I don't think I can share my screen actually. So maybe
you should be able to now, Casey.
Oh, cool. Thank you. And these are notes, so I'll do my best to share what my thinking was. But it was looking internally at that deputy county administrator at the midpoint. So this is where I'm not quite sure we would still want to land there, knowing that they all are paid at the top. But possibly. And where I kind of landed when I was thinking, knowing what I can tell about the deputy county administrator role, like it is distinguished in certain ways. They are more involved in the day-to-day work. There's a different like skill set that they use. They have responsibility for development and implementation, and where the commissioners are really involved in like decision making. And they're focused on like the internal organizational effectiveness, which then impacts like the external outcomes. So where I was landing is that if the chair was positioned at 90% of that midpoint, and then if the commissioners were positioned at 90% of the chair, again, just kind of as a starting point to try to understand. And then this is like the percentage increase that it would be from the current pay. And this is the column O. So just the ERI, the first one. And so it just shows which counties are paid above and below each of those, which for the chair, it places the chair higher than everyone but Multnomah. And we've talked about that one's pretty distinguished. Like there's some factors in that role that are quite different. With the commissioner, this would put them pretty much right in the middle. And this is a 5.5% increase if you double their current rate, if that makes sense.
Say that again, if you double their current rate?
Yeah, their current like ERI, I think was like right around, somewhere around the low 50s. So, and they're kind of considered part-time, or I guess like based off of the salary, they're working part-time work. So I simply doubled that and said that 116,000 is a 5.5 increase if you would double their current pay first. Which also makes that assumption, which we haven't rehashed that. So yeah. Oh, Laura, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you for putting this together. I was just going to say, like, sometimes it's nice when people take different approaches and things sort of line up. So I'm sure everyone has noticed this, but the numbers are not that far off from the comparators that we chose and the market averages. So I think the fact that we have two different sources, whether or not internal is the best source anymore, knowing what we know about the county administrator's office, I think at least in its current state, it's nice to see that the numbers are pretty close to market. So for me, I feel like we're on the same track, and whichever approach we use, I think it's backed up by an additional source. And Brianna and I had also talked about how some of the other jurisdictions do place a percentage on the chair above the commissioners. And I think this, this would essentially do that as well, like a 10% increase for the chair as compared to commissioners, which kind of seems like a nice way to do it, or at least Brianna and I saw some benefits to it. I think the one thing to consider is, do we want to anchor it to the deputy county administrator midpoint, or do we want to use that as an additional point of data that supports like the market average, and then place that premium such as 10% on the chair's position? But I appreciate you doing this, and for me, I'm happy to see that the numbers are somewhat close.
I really love what you just said about, because one of the challenges with the chair average market is you have Multnomah County in there that pulls it up. So what you just said was it would be using potentially the average for the commissioners and then doing 10% on top of that.
I think it's an option. We saw that with some comparators, but it varied quite a bit. Some places, I think Clackamas is only 2%, and then some places were 20%. I think Brianna found one that was 10%. So again, I think that's something that's up to us, but I think Brianna and I liked the idea of like placing that premium on the chair, and that way you're setting the commissioner's pay, which there are more commissioners. There is more of a market out there for commissioners. So it might, I don't know, it feels like a good structure to me.
Suzanne.
I want to thank Laura too for her comments. I think that just shows you that, as Laura said, that the methodologies, even though they're different, they're coming in with very similar numbers, which helps to validate the data when people are being questioned, which is why it's good to do that work. And then when you find that they're similar, you can almost stop doing, so that we don't get into too much more of the weeds. So I appreciate that very much.
And you're welcome to round numbers. I don't think that we want a 80-cent, salary number in there.
Go ahead, Laura.
I just wanted to clarify, Steve, I think you've already told us this, but for that second year, it sounds like we would also be making a recommendation potentially for a cost of living adjustment.
Right. That's correct.
And does the county administrator's office, do they receive COLA?
That I don't know. Perhaps Brad might know, or
Yeah,
yeah,
they do.
Okay. I don't know if we're like to this point, but I'll just throw out my personal opinion and chime in. I think that the market average for commissioners with a really good range of different jurisdictions with that ERI adjustment is 114,590. I think one potential, which is very close to what Casey pulled, could be saying 115 for commissioners and adding a 10% amount on top of that for the chair, and recommending next year a COLA increase if the county administrator's office receives COLA.
Does anyone have questions or want to talk about Laura's suggestion in more detail?
I was just wondering if it's a motion.
It may be. I just thought before doing a motion, we
can have the discussion, but if it was a motion, I would second it.
Or is everyone ready for a motion?
And Madam Chair, once the motion is seconded, we can open it up for discussion before we call for a vote. So,
okay.
Absolutely.
So, so Laura, is your proposal a motion so we can formally get a second? And
yes. I'm sorry, I should know this by now. Do I need to like repeat that?
Yeah, you could just say I move and then what you just said.
So I move that we use the market information that we gathered to set the commissioner's pay at $115,000, and we set the chair's pay at 10% above that, with a COLA granted next year if the county administrator's office receives COLA.
I second that motion.
Okay, so all in favor, raise your hand. Oh,
no, you open it for discussion, Madam Chair.
Oh, open it for discussion. Hey, see, thank you. Okay, now we'll have the discussion. Go ahead, Suzanne.
So I want to clarify that would, just doing the math, that would make the chair's salary $126,500. Is that right?
That's what I thought as well.
Well, I really think that this approach, especially knowing what we've just learned about the deputy county administrators and some of the internal movement, I think that philosophy of getting there makes the most sense. Other thoughts or questions? Okay, is everyone ready to vote then? Okay, so all in favor of this motion, raise your hand. And that was everyone. Okay, I had to look around real quick. That was everyone. So no one opposed and no one abstained. So the approach that we're taking is what Laura walked through. And yeah, I think we're good to go on that. So the next step for us would be to write this up and summarize the primary factors leading to that, and then just kind of finalizing that documentation. And that would be for our next meeting agenda, is to walk through that. I would be happy to offer to put together the draft, especially since I know everyone else did so much background work on all the comparators. So if that's okay, unless someone else is really excited to do the draft. Okay, I'll take that, and then I'll send it a couple days before we meet so you all can like review it on your own. So when we actually have our next meeting on Wednesday, the 21st, we can walk through edits and things like that and finalize it in that meeting.
Let me just check in. Brad, is that okay that we sent, the draft is sent out beforehand?
Yeah, that shouldn't be a problem at all.
Okay, great. I just want to make sure we weren't doing the meet, because you're not deciding on anything when you receive the draft other than thinking about, does it need editing, et cetera.
Right.
With that, congratulations. I think you guys have done, came up with a solution that works on many levels. All the extra work for the internal versus external lined up. I think it's a good work product.
Heike, go ahead.
I just wanted to clarify that we're not this is a full-time or part-time position. We're just going to identify the recommendations for the salary.
That's correct.
Okay.
And that kind of takes number 2 out of the agenda. So we may have a short meeting.
I knew this group was going to be good and efficient.
Just needed all the data in front of us. Okay, and I think with the draft, it's just important that we're not discussing it outside of the meeting with each other. So, okay, good deal. Okay, so we will move past agenda item 1 and 2, and number 3 is other items or questions, and we've clarified next steps. So any other items or questions that anyone has? Okay, great. Then we will revisit number 4, just to remind everyone that the next meeting is on a Wednesday, the 21st at 3 p.m. instead of on Friday at 3 p.m. So we'll see you all in about 10 days. And yeah, any last comments or anything before we adjourn this meeting early?
I'd just like to say good work. I mean, really, when you guys all got together the first meeting, I knew you guys were going to click and, just be able to pull it together really quickly. I was, and you've looked at a lot of angles on this. So congratulations again.
Thank you. And thank you everyone for a great meeting, and we'll see you in a couple weeks.
Thanks, everybody. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a wonderful afternoon.
Bye.